So our next session is a case study by BXP. Jim Whalen has brought a couple of his team members to talk to you guys about them executing their building performance, some sustainability, their approach to sustainability, and a bunch of other things as far as how they have deployed technology across their entire portfolio. Jim, I'd like you guys to introduce yourselves real quick.
Sure, I'm Jim Whalen. I'm a Senior Vice President, CTO for BXP, formerly Boston Properties, so if I can reference that.
And I'm Matt Sexton, VP of Engineering for BXP in our Boston region.
Hello, I'm Ben Myers. I lead sustainability for BXP. And I'll say I was in the technical room, like the first session this morning.
Yeah.
This is the more fun room. I came in and people were laughing. I was like, this is where I should have been from the beginning. The technical room reminded me when I studied abroad in Ireland and I walked into an imaginary numbers calculus course. I was sitting there like, I'm in the wrong room. So
it reminds me when I was in college and I played offense and got moved to defense. And the defense was the rowdy room. All right. So yeah. So with that, Jim, talk a little bit about BXP and and about you guys' journey.
Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit about the company. So we are the largest publicly traded manager, developer, and owner of premier workspace in the United States. Right, that's a mouthful, right? And there's a lot of numbers here, but I'll just kind of key on a couple. You know, one is 185 properties. We do 3.3 billion in revenue. We service Fortune 100, 500, 1,000 companies in 6 markets. 3 on the East Coast, 3 on the West Coast, and we're a 55-year-old company. We've been public as a real estate investment trust for 28 years. I've been there for most of that chapter as a public chapter of the company. So again, just very, from the quality heritage of as a developer, we've built $11 billion in the last 15 years of new construction. Heritage of engineering excellence, exhibited by Matt here, and just a commitment to the clients that we serve. So that's really the highlights there. So
yeah. So Ben, talk a little bit about you guys' sustainability efforts.
Sure. So our overarching philosophy is that what gets managed, or what gets measured gets managed. And we have a sustainability strategy of owning, managing, and developing premier workplace that's high performance and healthy while simultaneously mitigating externalities associated with energy, emissions, water, and waste. So around 2015, when we formalized the program, I was a construction manager that moved into a corporate role leading the sustainability program. And one of the first things we did was complete benchmarking of KPIs, establishing public targets so there was accountability. So we set our first energy, water, waste, emissions targets back in 2015. And since then, we've continued to hold ourselves accountable with our stakeholders, showing progress towards achieving energy reductions, towards achieving carbon reductions. And I think if you go to the next slide, you get a sense of the magnitude of the reductions we've achieved. So 2008 was our base year. We had a site energy use intensity around 95 kBTU per square foot. We've cut that 39% since 2008. So that results in $49.5 million of annually recurring cost savings. So what we try to do is tie our sustainability initiatives to financial performance outcomes for the company. That's increasingly important in this political environment, right? You see a lot of companies that got sort of caught up in the excesses, if you will, of 2020 and 2021, that are now trying to defend some of what they were doing, tying it to financial performance and a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders. We've always operated that way, right? So we look at a set of 200 large energy conservation measures, and they have a simple payback period of 3.7 years. And that's typically what we like to see, with a combination of energy savings and rebates and incentives, which our teams work on achieving and securing with our utility partners and program administrators.
Yeah. So Jim, what did that journey look like to get there?
Yeah, good. So Ben talked about formalizing 2015 when you got into that role. Yeah. But I think our first GRES filing was in 13, probably around 13 or so. Yeah. And I'll just say, I know this is being recorded, but it was a shit show. The ability to kind of manually assemble all your data points, package it, get it filed, and probably not have great confidence in the data. And data, as Ben pointed out, really has been a fundamental enabler, facilitator of the work. We've gone through and standardized like how we do main meters, how our energy bills are processed so we can harvest data off that, how we've then taken that and moved it into Energy Star. We can talk about Energy Star, and then packaged it. So Ben is able to then with confidence, be able to generate these publicly stated goals that we then live by and we measure ourselves by. So it's been I would just say it's been a data journey. When someone talks to me, like comes up to me and says, hey, where should I start? We're struggling with where we start. You start really you can start with easy stuff to measure, like even just main meters get you somewhere. And that has been a really, again, an enabler for us. So again, Ben's team now can actually hit that button a month early with complete confidence in like what we're packaging, what we're presenting to the market. I don't know if you agree with that.
You want to add some color to that?
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of garbage out there that gets disclosed because the same sort of rigor that we put around accounting practices as a publicly traded company hasn't existed for sustainability metrics. So you get people like trying to do GRES that have an investor relations function or marketing, and they don't know what they're looking at in terms of units. Like I have my undergraduate was environmental and civil engineering, and my whole team has a building science background. One of them was doing energy modeling for 12 years. So bringing people who are familiar with the metrics into the process to do the quality control and assurance helps us not only be transparent with our stakeholders on what we're doing, but also make sure that we're giving them high quality information that they can trust. And data quality remains a very important aspect of what we do. And that is a journey, and it's continuously improving. And we can talk more about that.
All right. So it sounds like a huge commitment that you guys have towards these sustainability goals and implementing a lot of these let's just say best practices that you have. How does that and some of your strategy get translated into practical practice?
Yeah, so I think the way that we look at our portfolio is 60 plus million square feet across those 6 markets. And you have buildings across the portfolio of all ages, vintages, and types, right? So some of our buildings need more work than others, right? In order to sort of get to where we ultimately want to be from a programmatic standpoint. And 200 Clarendon is one of those buildings in Boston, 2.1 million square foot, 60-story high-rise that was originally built in 1972, acquired by BXP in the 2010s, operated solely by BXP in 2012, and the building needed a lot of work, right? There was a lot of blocking and tackling, a lot of level setting that needed to be done in the building to sort of unlock the gains that we knew that we could achieve from an operational standpoint. So over a number of years, we took the steps to take a look at the original basis of design, right, from the 1970s. How was this building originally intended to operate, right? What do we have at our disposal today in terms of mechanical equipment? And what can we do, within the confines of what we have, right? Central plant, large air handlers, 3 mechanical floors, basement, 7, 61st floor, to try and unlock some of the efficiencies that we know that we weren't able to realize initially. And that was replacing major equipment in the central plants, that was working overhauling air handlers, that was making sure you had damper functionality, right? A lot of that sort of gritty, basic stuff that needs to happen before you can really start looking at advanced controls. And then the second phase of this kind of modernization effort, right, was a full BMS retrocommissioning, and basically a rewrite of all of the control sequences in the building, right? Your interior systems, your perimeter systems, hot water, chill water. This is a steam building, right? It's connected to our district steam system in Boston. You can kind of see all of the sequences that we wrote from scratch to control this 50-plus-year-old equipment, right, in a way that would start to really unlock those energy efficiency gains. And one of the things that's unique about 200 Clarendon, it goes, you can't talk about this building without talking about is the facade, right? So you can see in the picture. This is a 60-story glass tower And that is all 1-inch single pane glass. There's no double glazing. There's no triple glazing.
Energy hog.
That is half-inch single pane glass up the entire building. So obviously, our perimeter loads are significant. So a lot of what we were able to do from a controls retro commissioning standpoint and from a sequence standpoint is really addressing how we were controlling a lot of those perimeter systems to deal with that load, but to do it in an efficient way, right? So again, you can sort of see some of the metrics there on the screen, but we invested the better part of $13 million into this 2-year program, and the Energy Star score went from 38 to 83, and there was almost a 40% reduction in EUI at the building. But again, you have to sort of approach that initial ground level blocking and tackling. The mechanical equipment needs to be at a certain point functionally, right, before you can apply controls in a way that can really unlock what we were able to do here.
Because I think we're kind of highlighting like just how do you deal with an existing portfolio, which is also like, oh, we can do all this great stuff in new greenfield, but how do you tackle these 50-year-old assets and green? I know GM was the other one, right?
Yeah. Yeah. GM was one of those milestones for us as a company in 2008 when we acquired GM. It was like arriving on the scene in New York in a big way. You know, a whole city block right on Central Park, which will never be built again, right? 2 million square feet. And everything about the building was amazing. We had a lot of value add opportunity. We were excited about the acquisition. What wasn't amazing was the environmental performance of the asset, which is, it had an energy use intensity of 140 kBtu per square foot. So that is considered an energy hog, right? And what that means is much higher operating expenses. But through the acquisition process and underwriting, we knew that we had some improvements we could make. And the biggest chunk was the obvious stuff, lighting, right, going through doing complete retrofits. But we did a full ALC building management system upgrade, new controls. Around the same time, we modernized the chiller plant. So we had old steam absorption chillers that we replaced with electric drive lines. So we're using steam for cooling.
And this is up on the 34th floor, right, of this building. Yeah.
And we've been using real-time energy performance data, a combination of measurable AO and Nantum to do more dynamic occupancy-based controls of set points. We're doing more differential pressure set point adjustments. We're doing much more setbacks in spaces that are underutilized. You think about the Monday, Friday occupancy patterns in the office space. It's a tremendous opportunity that's not being leveraged right now across the sector, in part because of a deficiency of controls to do it well. So all this modernization work cut the energy use intensity in half from 140 to 70. And this last year, we earned the Energy Star label for the first time at this asset with a real Energy Star eligible score, not the Energy Star LEED Gold we acquired at 200 Clarendon, which was kind of bunk, right? Which was a bit of a lie. Getting to garbage and data quality, right? Buyer
Garbage,
beware.
Right.
Yeah,
That's right. So this sounds like a huge program, right? And even for a large organization like you guys, and all three of you are from different disciplines within that organization. How did you guys achieve alignment within your organization to achieve something like this and be on the same page moving forward with these programs?
Ben, you want to?
Sure.
Just kind of kick it off.
Yep.
So this program doesn't exist as a function of facilities management or marketing or legal, sort of back of house with spreadsheets like kept in a dark room. I report directly to our president and our CEO who have really bought in to the value we can create through sustainability initiatives. And we have a dedicated board level sustainability committee. So, we go and talk about various issues impacting the industry and how we're approaching something like carbon neutral operations, which we achieved this year for the first time for emission scopes 1 and 2. The Energy Star program, which I'm sure you've seen in the news, EPA's Energy Star program is slated to be cut. That is something that's very much a risk for a company like ours, where we have our book of record. All of our environmental KPIs are tracked in the Energy Star program offered by EPA. That's going to be tremendously disruptive to the sector who relies on that tool. So board level oversight, senior management bought in and committed, and then a sustainable operations team, right? Engineering leadership, where we have an annual summit now. We have working groups working on everything from IAQ and this building operations platform project we're working on at the moment to EV charging. And so we bring together our senior engineering leadership and occasionally tap someone from development or property management to join different working groups to provide more of an interdisciplinary setting to discuss what we want to get out of the project. And we try to get this internal buy-in from the bottom up before we just push anything top down. I think that's been essential to our success. Jim, you might want to elaborate.
Yeah, no,
on
just I think and COVID was kind of an accelerator. We had as a company, under Ben's leadership, he oversaw a health, safety, security task force that was really across the entire company, and we published this great industry standard report in May of 2020. We implemented it and got all the measures in place, and no one came back.
Yeah,
no one came back.
That's some trauma, Jim.
Right. But what we did there is we brought. It was an opportunity to bring the organization. We're decentralized. We have 6 markets. Matt has counterparts in each of those markets that drive the leadership of engineering teams there. And so it was a kind of an accelerant bringing these groups together. Ben and I are cyclists. We would ride during COVID, and we talk about how we would leverage this for the next chapter. And what we wound up doing is we wound up focusing on IAQ. We did a big IAQ initiative for the company, 500 sensors and 40 buildings. And again, we thought our clients would care about that. They didn't care about that. But it was a lot of learnings,
They cared then.
They cared then, but yeah, stopped caring. And then we morphed that into an engineering leadership group, which we have monthly calls, and I chair and Ben chairs, and we bring 20 to 30 of our leaders together every year now to drive change. And Matt brings his team. These are pictures from some of the summits that we've had in the last 3 years, and it's really to drive this collaboration. From all the disciplines that make this work, and I was intrigued even on security, Mike, on the prior. A lot of this is language, just getting people to talk to one another and understand how to translate to really drive momentum forward. So that's just kind of more.
Yeah, I think that model results in active users and user engagement, right? So we have 250 commodity meters where we're looking at steam and gas and electricity, real-time consumption. It's one thing to have that capability and have that interval data and that platform for visibility of how you're consuming in real time these resources. It's another thing for engineers and users to be in that system using it. And by involving all of these users in the decision-making process, they own it.
Yeah, because we look at some of our peers spend, and it's like sometimes, it comes out of a sustainability. It's a mandated thing they're doing, but it doesn't. They're not talking to the engineers. They're not talking to other disciplines in the company. Yeah. And I think again, Matt, I don't know if the work that you do with all of us and the support you get, it's just a coordinated effort.
Yeah. How does that alignment happen?
No, absolutely. I think what's been critical to our success, especially from where I sit in the organization, which is very much focused through an OT lens, right? Under my purview of the 16 million square feet of operating Class A assets in Boston, right? I have a team of almost 180 folks from engineering leadership down to our skilled trades in our buildings, right? Running the buildings on a day-to-day basis. And the only way that we've been, collectively able to move the ball down the field, right, is through partnership, right? So Jim, obviously leading our company from an IT perspective, right, has led the company on a journey that has I think transformed us from a infrastructure standpoint, right? And then obviously from a sustainability standpoint, a lot of those requirements and publicly stated goals for the company, right, flow down to those who are physically in the buildings, operating them on a day-to-day basis, right, to execute, right, to achieve those levels of performance. So for me, kind of sitting in between the two, I think, having this sort of collective conversation on a continual basis. It's not periodic. It's not quarterly. It's not whenever we have time, it is continuous, has really allowed me specifically to be able to sort of implement a roadmap to bring our buildings along for a journey where we're really going to ideally, transform them from, analog to digital assets. But Jim's team, from a corporate infrastructure standpoint, has learned a lot, and a lot of those learnings are now flowing from the IT side of the house to the OT side of the house. And again, right, as we're able to unlock the value in those assets and digitize buildings in a way that makes sense, it only makes us that much more capable to achieve the ambitious sustainability goals that we've set forth for the company and for our shareholders.
Yeah. If I could just riff on an example, because I think an anecdote's powerful here. The picture that's you see in your bottom left is me and Matt sitting in a air handling unit that was attached to a super block heat recovery technology that we were investigating up in Canada. We actually flew pretty close to that from Boston to Detroit the other day.
Right.
Give a stop there. But this was an example where leasing met with a client of ours and promised them that they could deliver on a net zero, fully electric building with a very low energy use that was LEED Zero certified.
An existing building.
Existing building that we're converting, a 20-year-old office building in Needham, Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. Now we had to go out and find the technology to execute on that vision and get the control sequences right? So we have a new super block heat recovery system that was being tacked on to an interior VAV system with electric reheats at terminal boxes. And we need to figure out how we operate the existing mechanicals in harmony with an LG heat pump system we were adding to electrify, plus this heat recovery, two boxcar units we were putting on the roof. And so it was a leasing sort of representation of what an obligation that they said we could give to a client, sustainability, sort of helping with that strategy, and then engineering and construction development having to execute on that vision for a client that's going to hold the operations team responsible at the end of the day. Right. So that's why you need that vertical integration and alignment, because the representations, the promises that are made far upstream need to be executed by the folks in the field.
So I'd be remiss, because we are controls con, to not kind of do a deep dive on the controls aspect of that just a little bit, right? So if you can imagine, right, Superblock came from a manufacturer with its own controls. The air handler was built from a manufacturer that was a package unit, came with its own controls, right? We removed the gas heat furnace from the existing unit. New unit was with VRF, right? VRF from a third vendor came with its own controls, right? And then all of that needed to be integrated into the existing building management system.
Which wasn't being upgraded.
Which was not being upgraded. That's right.
Which I learned, that should have been in the scope. So.
But I think that aspect of this project, it was obviously interesting from a mechanical standpoint. We're obviously been able to achieve the net zero goals that we set out to achieve, but over a 18-month period of delivery, startup, commissioning, and then a full 12-month M&V period, there has been constant involvement from not just the factory, but obviously multiple MSIs, the automation system vendor, et cetera, right? All working together to sort of put all these pieces of the puzzle together so that you can effectively operate against what I would term an idealistic sequence of operations to achieve this very aggressive goal for energy use intensity in the building.
Yeah,
right?
It's different for the reason that we have that target, because we're meeting set points, right? We're meeting comfort requirements of the client. No one would know that there was issues, right? But we have this very aggressive ultra low EUI, so we're tuning this thing like a hot rod, like a Formula One car, and it has made that, it makes the project more challenging.
Is that Formula E?
Whatever, I don't know.
So look, you guys have seen all the sessions that we're talking about, all the topics that we're talking about here at Controls Con, cloud-based solutions, IP technology, the whole 9 yards. What is BXP doing to address all those things? Like, for instance, converged networks. Jim, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I'll talk about our journey. I grabbed this slide knowing that there's a lot in this slide.
Right.
So we run a converged network. IT to OT is all on one network. We started that journey back in 2004. So we've been at it for 20 years. We have over 13,000 IP endpoints. Only 3,500 control the company. They're all mostly OT serving devices. We have an enterprise security program that we lay down. Everything is segmented, remote controls, I mean, everything, all the controls you would anticipate. And when we started this journey, back in 2004, it was all about economies of scale. That was the driver. It was just kind of getting, hey, I'm an IT guy. We're one network. That makes sense. Let's converge thing. Our first building was one of Matt's buildings, Atlantic Wharf, in 2007. We built, it was the first converged building. All systems came onto one. But then in 2011, cyber came up. You started the software to automate attacks. Came out, the inflection point was 2011. You can pinpoint it. And cyber became a really important driver for what we were doing. And we enhanced our whole cyber program over 2011-15. And then post-16, like we're building, I talked about, $11 billion of construction. We're in this it's just greasing the skids. And it was all about starting to do with technology orchestration. Some of the things the panels were talking about earlier, and data integrations. I need systems to talk to one another. I need to be solving use cases for our clients. And even though cyber is really still important foundationally, and really our next chapter that we're planning, and not planning, it's underway, is really this journey to the cloud. I mean, we next month we will finish a 10-year journey to finish our enterprise. I have no more corporate applications, assets in our data center, right? For the last 7 years, facility systems have been moving to the cloud. Parking, access control, right? Lighting. I mean, all the system controls are all, and now BMS, right? So we regened our network in 2019. We call that Network 3.0, and I have my team now focused on Network 4.0, which is going to support the next 10-year journey. We'll be implementing that probably in 2027, 28. But it'll be to support a continued cloud migration as capital events occur. Like we run, separate from a converged security scheme, we run in our large buildings, BXP servers, virtualized servers that support all the systems in the building, right? And I've told my team, like we're going to hit an inflection point probably in 26. I'm not approving any more hardware in the buildings. We need a strategy for this being hosted, in Microsoft. We're a Microsoft partner, so that's probably going to be the journey that we're on. But that will be the journey that we'll be on. And I think the industry is not. I personally is not ready. Not ready for it, not grappling with it. But this is really a positioning for us, Greg, that we see loud and clear because it's already happened on the enterprise. Right. It's already happened on the enterprise.
Right. So one of our sessions at the end of this program is going to be MSTP versus IP, the great debate. So I know that you guys are migrating from MSTP, from serial to IP.
Well, it depends. So I'm going to have Matt talk about this in a minute because I talked about 13,000, IP endpoints. We're seeing this growth because capital events affect systems. They increase the number of IP points you have. We built all this life science buildings in Boston, and you can talk about just the proliferation of controllers, right? And all IP based.
Sure. So I think before we get to that, Greg, I think the session later today is going to be very interesting because all the work that I mentioned at 200 Clarendon, that's an MSTP network, right? That is entirely an RS-485 building. And we did all of that work within the confines and frankly, some of the limitations of what you have with MSTP, right? But no, certainly for any of our repositionings or new construction, we are 100% pushing with a standard of BACnet IP. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First is just the stability of the network, right? there's always a concern about a twisted pair getting exposed, right? Or a termination not being done quite correctly, right? Or frankly, during a fit out in a multi-tenant building, which we're a multi-tenant landlord, right? Just having a wire get cut inadvertently during demo, right? And you lose part of your floor level network, so it just, there's a lot of challenges around existing MSTP in my view. So it's reliability, it's obviously flexibility and the ability to expand over time, right? And also not just from a physical device standpoint in terms of what you can support from a network distribution standpoint, but also obviously the bandwidth, right? I mean, 200 Clarendon, before we started, had over 80,000 bundled and unbundled points in that automation system, which is being passed through an MSTP network. You can imagine what our graphic refresh experience was like, right? Trying to do that, especially with a lot of those data points being trended at either 5-minute intervals, or we did a lot of COV work as well, right? Which is near real time. So you're pushing a lot and asking a lot of those MSTP networks to try and give you that feedback in the time frame that you want it, right? So IP obviously eliminates any of that sort of bandwidth concern, but IP-based networks also allow us to sort of envision, what an advanced analytics framework will look like for the company, right? Being able to pass data to different.
This was talked about this morning. Just the
absolutely.
cloud just opens up all these
cloud just opens up,
capabilities.
yeah.
Well, you guys touched on the cloud briefly. Talk to me about your journey to the cloud.
It's just a technology. To me, it's a technology. Cloud first has been in place since like 2015. You could probably argue earlier, where the paradigm for how you develop software, deploy software, manage software, update software fundamentally changed. I still think there's, what we're seeing is a lot of, service providers saying, "Oh, we're cloud, but we're just really hosting. We're hosting." That's not a cloud change in a cloud paradigm. And I do, and Nitish mentioned this earlier. I do see as a technologist, like there's going to be another fundamental change, maybe in 2 years, 3 years, where it's AI first. Like you had cloud first. You have a paradigm change for AI first foundational, how software is designed, and that only happens in the cloud, Greg.
Right.
And at scale. So I think it's just been a natural evolution. We've done it on, I told you, 10 years on the enterprise side, and I called it an evaporation strategy. Piece, evaporate. It was evaporate. Like pieces would evaporate. And we're finishing that journey next month. And now we're going to be in this evaporation with our buildings for the next 10 years. That's the way it's going to play out. Because it needs capital events, needs life cycle events to actually affect the change.
And you guys have a huge portfolio. How do you handle occupancy data? Because I know that's important to you guys.
I could riff on this all day. So it's great. We have had starting in 2018. One of our development leads came to me and said, "Hey, we're developing this new building in Hudson Yards, and I don't believe what the architect's telling me about the escalators we need to get up the capacity to get up to the sky lobby." And I'm like, "Oh, we can find that out." So we literally sourced like 5 buildings, and we were able to show them like between 8:45 and 9 o'clock in New York City, this is what you need. This is what you need. So in 2018, we said, "Oh, we could do this." So we started building a warehouse of covering now 26 million square feet of our space, and it's 130 million card swipe records now. Right? Wow. And so we used this data in a presentation in November 2019, to say, hey, how are our clients thinking about density? Everyone was worried about everyone was moving to the WeWork model and going, to higher density or lower densities, higher densities. And we were able to say, no, if you care about your talent, you care about your culture, you're not doing that. Fortune 1000, Fortune 500 companies are not doing that. So, hey, then COVID happens. This data becomes incredibly important, and now we've done all these analytics. And what I will say is, we've had very strong return to work in New York. It's not at the pre-COVID level. It's like 0.6 to 0.8 less average days in the office than pre-COVID, right? Fridays. It's Fridays.
Right.
It's Fridays, right? So we have clients now have set in their patterns. They are set in their patterns. And we try to use that data now to inform like how we're doing setbacks. It's manual. Most of them are manual. It's not, that intervention is still a manual process, but we use this and it's now available. And we've also used it now for predictive analytics on leasing. I can, with two variables, an X and a Y, predict who's contracting, who's leaving us, who's staying with us at the same square footage, who's expanding with us. I literally can predict what our clients are doing with us with this data. It's that powerful. So it's been a great, but I'm more excited about how it informs our operations, right? So
Ben, you want to add any color to that?
Well, I would, just to Jim's last point, I think how it informs operations is what's going to matter most to the sustainability guy. Again, this pattern, which I hope the pattern isn't fixed in the West Coast, Jim. We'd like to see more.
Well, but the West Coast was already down below, and they fell, and so it's anyway. It's just
but in New York, for sure, like we have financial services companies, law firms that are very much in a fixed pattern, and many of them are not in the office Monday and have less occupancy, even less occupancy on Fridays. So the question is, what do you do then? Do you have to ventilate to the same degree? Do you have to maintain space temperatures to the same amount? And we have no dynamic way to control our BMS to adjust to occupancy. And we've been talking about smart buildings for a long time. Jim, what's your saying about smart buildings?
We don't have smart buildings. We have buildings with smart technologies, not smart buildings.
Yes.
So that's my.
So how do we leverage this occupancy data set, which has been so helpful from a business strategy perspective to make our buildings perform better?
Yeah. So we've talked about the cloud. Last session we talked quite a bit about cybersecurity. Jim, talk to me a little bit about what you guys are doing.
It's just. I mean, I think I implied it in what the enterprise security approach, and I want to do a call out to Mike and Nitesh. The Real Estate Cyber Consortium has 10 billion square feet represented around the leadership group on that table, and it's and Greg, you're very involved in. Scott, the support of that group as well. So I don't know if I have much to add there, other than that it's an enterprise approach, and we apply the same principles, IT to OT. I know there's a big debate in the industry about that. I don't care. I want one team. I want one set of principles. I want it applied. I want it variables managed, and that's how we simplify our variables and how we apply our program.
Yeah.
So
now you guys seem to be extremely focused and data driven and all that good stuff. It's 2025. What's next? What's next with BXP? What are you guys doing? Looking towards the future.
Why don't you tee it up on, because we just got through an exercise of 2030 goals, right?
Yeah, that's right. So we're looking at the future. Where can we control energy expenses? There's a lot of conversation right now about energy cost escalation, which is hitting record highs combined with load growth, right? We're moving from a 2 to 3 decade period of 0.2% load growth across the US to something closer to 3%, it looks like, going forward. That's a huge shift. We also have clean power commitments at the state level that are going to drive cost if we don't figure out a way to bring cheaper resources online with more transmission, distribution from the high voltage transmission level all the way through to substations and vaults in our cities. So a lot of infrastructure investment. We want to make sure that we are weathering escalating energy costs by continuing to reduce consumption in our buildings. So we have a set of 16 buildings where we believe between today and 2030 we can cut energy use another 8 to 10% while accommodating more physical occupancy, because we are seeing physical occupancy. While much of it has stabilized in certain buildings in New York, we are seeing physical occupancy changes in other markets, right? Where more like the Amazon, get back to work. That changes how a building uses energy.
Just real interesting, real because this came in the last 2 weeks, we're doing a little side project on occupancy, because what I've noticed in Boston, when there's a bad weather day, people just choose not to come in.
Yeah.
So I'm doing a weather-based analysis. I'm in the team doing a weather-based analysis to see what the percentage impact on a bad weather day is like in Boston and New York, because people choose, like, I can work from home.
Well, the flip side is
so
you don't get snow days anymore.
Yeah,
which
true.
completely stinks.
Right.
But yeah, so we're looking at our 2030 goals. We also have a water goal. I think it's gonna be harder to meet. There's a lot of water loss in cooling towers that I'd like to dial in, right? Where there's blowdowns, there's evaporation. Like, how can we control some of those factors? I mean, we have buildings where half the water use is cooling towers, which is, and then obviously irrigation, where we have it in the suburbs, still a lot of opportunity there to control irrigation better. So looking at the water target as well.
Yeah. I don't care what session we have, AI always seems to come up. So for you, Matt, and facilities, how does AI affect your team and some of the tools that you guys are using?
Yeah, so I think what we have on the slide here is sort of the journey that we're going to go on, right? And I think the AI piece is something that we're going to leverage at the end of this journey, right? But I think we have to understand sort of how buildings have been laid out historically in our industry, right? From a control standpoint, right? There's a design from a design engineer or a controls group, right? Equipment is selected, a building is built and designed, started up and commissioned at a single point in time, right? And then it is entrusted to the operations team to essentially try and run that building at that design point for the entire life of the building, right? Right. That's why we have ongoing commissioning efforts. That's why we have retro commissioning efforts. Right. The idea is to always try and to control that drift and get back to sort of what was the original basis of design. Yeah. Right. But fundamentally, in my mind, I view the world that's sort of automation 1.0, right? And we need to get to a point where we're moving from static sequences to dynamic sequences, right? Buildings need to be more responsive to the grid. Right. In terms of being to affect demand response, maybe even getting to a point where they're DER, they are DERs at some point to provide grid level flexibility. The occupancy is a huge variable that historically we have not had very good visibility into, that we haven't tracked, and it certainly hasn't been a control input into way mechanical systems have been operated, right? So what we really want to do, right, is move from this idea of sort of BMS 1.0 static sequences, single point in time, to this more fully automated approach where you are implementing dynamic sequences that are taking in data streams from the deployment of IoT sensors, right, in real time, feeding that into the way you're controlling your equipment, so you're not controlling for a fixed assumption of 7,500 people in a building and bringing in that much outside air, right? I mean, we should be able to control that on a near real-time basis. And that's going to drive significant energy savings.
Yes.
Because obviously, right, a lot of energy is, just as an example, is used to condition that outside air. So we have this equation, right? And you have the things on the three parts of the triangle are generally in tension in our business, right? You have occupant comfort, right? We as a company strive to provide a premier experience inside of our buildings. And we do that through occupant comfort, right? Ventilation and filtration from an indoor environmental quality standpoint. And then you have energy consumption, right? But as you move one lever in one direction, right, you're impacting the other legs of that triangle, right? But then you have externalities like occupancy and weather, which I think historically we've done a great job with weather, implementing that into the way we control our buildings with optimal start sequences and building some of that intelligence into our control sequences. But again, occupancy, in my view, has really been that blind spot.
I remember my first meeting with New York in like 2015. They said our engineers are the weathermen. And I was like, that's not encouraging.
But this is the equation that operating teams are trying to solve on a real-time basis, right? But then from a strategic level, right, this is the equation that we're trying to solve and understand, right? Where can advanced technology solutions help solve this problem, right? Where does AI play a role in solving this equation, right? To allow our teams to run our buildings more efficiently and be more responsive to the way our clients are using their space.
Yeah. So what about, here you go. You guys talked about a building performance RFP. I heard that mentioned in the conversation, Jim.
So this is like a culmination of this journey. Like we've just been on these learnings, the IQ, the occupancy data. I mean, being informed as a team, and we actually have an active RFP on the street right now. We're spending a couple hours at Code Labs tomorrow on their response. We really kind of, I talked to Scott and I'm like, hey, I could like tie a couple things here. We're going to Bedrock tomorrow, and it was like, woo, it was great. But we're so anyway, so we're on this journey, and it's we have to get in the game to build capacity, build learnings, build depth on how, because we have talent challenges, we have goals that we need to meet from an energy and cost reduction. So how does that get facilitated, right? So
yeah. So I was just about to go to questions.
Just I guess, quick question. Appreciate the transparency and the presentation. But I think the only question that I have is from a tenant perspective, right? When you look at your quarterlies and everything else, from a tenant perspective, what has been like a really good use case that you guys have worked together with some of your bigger tenants, and maybe a use case that maybe didn't work out as well either, and you can use that however, but I just would love to understand that a little better.
Of these guys specifically, but like we're fundamentally a multi-client provider of space, right? And there's typically boundaries at the door, right? And we look for areas of collaboration, but the industry doesn't have good paradigms for how you do collaboration, how you do partnership in a multi-tenanted office building. Although we have informed clients, and you probably
I was going to say, maybe you can talk about Apple Wallet. I mean, I think that was a great deployment and partnership.
True, yeah. So we're dabbling. We're dabbling with models for as a service model, right? And we have a big Apple mobile credential in the wallet program, and it's in partnership as a service. We enable the building and we do a service. Hey, go talk and do a contract, and they can do the enablement to extend the service. Big success in New York as an example. But how does it apply to a partnership that might include like occupancy sensors in space? I don't know. I don't know your thoughts or.
Yeah, no, so I think what's been interesting historically is that there's been a very clear demarcation point at the door of the client space, right? They have basically said, hey, we want full tactical operational control of what's happening in here. I think we've started to see sentiment change on that front as business leaders are trying to get more insight into how space is being used, what their exposure is to rising energy costs, and how they can potentially have better insight into their own company's OpEx. So I think we're having more conversations around the deployment of technology with on the other side of that door. But it's very early innings right now.
Yeah, I would refer back to the case study it was Wellington Management is the tenant there. Executing on net zero, which we could do an hour on that case study alone, I think is very successful. Another way
that's available online.
That's we've written it up.
Yeah.
Another area where I see the landlord-tenant relationship blurring and this sort of cold box that we provide in the United States for our tenants is around building performance standards like Local Law 97 in New York or BERDO in Boston. Like these carbon emissions caps and significant fines are already informing lease negotiations, right? Where tenants are trying to hold landlords responsible for potential fines. And landlords are saying, well, half of the energy consumption of this building is yours. So how can we partner on reducing that half and sharing responsibility? So that could be a fundamental moment, a watershed moment, building performance standards and sort of blurring the lines between the landlord and tenant energy use, because the landlord is responsible under these regulations, but through the lease form, you have a reason to put in place some sticks to hold a tenant responsible.
We have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Any more questions? Ed.
Probably for Jim. One thing that worries me a little bit, we're all for IP-based controllers and being out there, but we're getting pushback from IT people saying you guys are eating up too many IP addresses. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, no, it's a
here we go.
great.
So I'd love to hear your comments on that.
Great point. So I beat up my team. The last 2 years with my team, and Matt's probably heard this, is like I want to get the price per port down. You need to reduce the price per port because we have this port and it has all this infrastructure. It's a managed switch environment, has security built around it, and that I can put a number on that, and we need to drive that down by 30 to 50%, right? So thinking about next network, like the next network and how we position and think about it, and how the supply chain also has to come along for that ride. That's really so Matt does a life science building, for example, brand new building or repositioning, or probably the new one, and it blew up the budget. It's just like we have so many IP-based controllers. That's the design, and we had to live with the added cost in this example. But I'm using this as a prism, like how do we drive it down? And that's really it's not there today for us. So,
but I would also offer that there's a lot of ways that we can be, I think, intelligent and efficient about the way that we lay out the architecture of these networks. Right? Not everything needs to be a home run back to Jim's managed switch in my world. Right? There's an opportunity to IP daisy chain. Right? And you still get all the benefits of that sort of going IP, right? But it does limit the IP load from an overall construction standpoint. So I think there's certainly things that you want and need to be home run back to a switch based on their criticality and the functionality. But there's certainly a lot of things that don't need to be, right? So being smart about how those architectures are laid out, right? And weighing sort of the criticality, functionality versus the impact on the IT infrastructure side is really important. And I think there's a lot of opportunities to sort of tighten that up as you go through the design process.
Paul?
One quick question. I agree with you 100%. I might be all the way. My big challenge, I think, is the quality of the network. Who's responsible from your team to execute the delivery of who's installing the cables, certifying, testing the cables, make sure you hit the performance marks you need?
Yeah. So that's a block and tackle with our GCs and our subcontractors, and our teams are, our team, like we've inserted our teams for 10 plus years at least, if not longer. They sit on the design process.
Right.
We have standards that get communicated with construction. They sit on the design meetings. They sit on the commission. All the way through the process. So we do have some semblance of governance, but it's still block and tackle. These phone calls. Right. We're doing a design review yesterday that I had to sit in on, and I had to arbitrate between the IT and the GC design just to ask the questions. So translating this language issue that we always have between the teams. So it's just but you have to get some kind of governance in place and structure, and that's what we try to do.
Right, because my concern is if you put it on the contractor, the controls contractor, to do that. I've been through this, especially with the life science project. They don't even know what to do.
Oh my! Where's that cable supposed to be there per the? Exactly. I mean, it's and even with the assurance checks and the process, it's nature.
It's a big difference because we require in our spec a generated report of the cabling. Yeah.
And then the quality of GCs versus and the difference in different markets. There's all different how you have to execute. So.
Well, and just to that point, I think we talked a lot about the collaboration of the team here, but there is a early and often presence from folks on Jim's team as these projects are even at the SD phase. That's the key. Right? That there's an initial understanding of, hey, what are the infrastructure requirements going to be? What does the switch layout kind of look like, right? Where are the IDF rooms going to be, right? Is this going to work? Is it not going to work? So we're having a lot of those coordination type conversations very, very early. So by the time we get a general contractor on board and the design documents are complete, right? There's no real surprises of how the project is going to be ultimately be executed, because we've had all those conversations. So again, it goes back to Jim's team from a corporate IT perspective, right? Supporting, me and my team as we liaise with the development teams and the construction teams to actually implement these projects, right? I mean, they are right there with us every step of the way.
And you made a key point, schematic design.
Yep.
Everything has to be ringed up. Don't bring people in when they're at 90%.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
I'd say design development.
Absolutely.
During DD, yeah.
I'm in the camp of earlier the better,
Yeah,
Greg.
exactly.
Right?
We've got time for one more question. We really don't, but
He's pushing the envelope.
Yeah, there were no questions in the technical room. Just by the way.
Is this working? Yeah. So you guys, I would deem you successful, right? And thank you again for your transparency. I know somebody else said that. This is fascinating. My question to you three is, you guys have bosses, and your bosses probably were big on like the COVID. It was the healthy building, and then it was like get everybody back in the building. So what is the trend now with your bosses in terms of how they're looking at investment for your buildings going forward? Could you kind of sum that up as to what the current state of your bosses are?
So both
Thank you.
Ben and I report to the president. But you go first, Ben.
First, you should listen to our earnings call. I think we're very transparent there as well about what we're trying to do. I mean, our focus right now is FFO, and that means leasing space. So if we can tie an initiative to helping attract a client, retaining a client, that is the priority at the moment in our zone. We've done a lot of CapEx proactively over the years, so we don't have buildings that are run down. We're having to spend a lot of CapEx, which is great. But we do have some aging beauties in our portfolios where we're looking at refreshes of finishes, refreshes of chiller plants, refreshes of building management systems. Like 399 Park Avenue in New York is a good example.
That's going to be another case study next year.
That'll be the case study next year. And I always love when I know the case study we're going to be talking about next we're working on it.
Yeah.
It's that time between projects. You're like, oh man, what's going to be the next one? And the 399 Park Avenue is definitely that one right now with the Allerton BMS and some central plant improvements. But to your answer, it's about attracting, retaining tenants and getting deals done.
Yeah.
So,
but at the same time, like, Doug Lindy, who's our president, but both Ben and I report to him, like, he's our sponsor for this building performance initiative. Like, we're very focused on sponsorship, leadership sponsorship for anything we do, and he's supporting what we're doing, as an all-in. So I mean, that's a commitment. He sees all the issues we've been talking about for like 3 years, and he's woven a case that he can support, like what we're doing to move the needle and move the portfolio.
And a lot of it has to do with energy, right? Where he understands that that's the largest operational expense where we have some degree of control.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, and I would just add a little bit of additional color to that discussion that we've had is energy is certainly sort of the easiest line of sight, right? That you can make an ROI calculation in terms of implementing technology, right? It's a pitch that we hear all the time. But, a second order value that we see, going on this journey is really around, making the folks in the field more efficient at what they do, right? We've created an incredible digital burden for building operating engineers over the past 5 to 10 years. And the end of the pitch is always, hey, the output of the system can just be reviewed by the building engineer and then they can figure out what to do with it, right? Well, there's not enough time in the day to be able to do that anymore, frankly. And we've progressed to a point where the skill set that's needed to truly leverage and extract the value from prop tech, IoT, even emerging AI type systems in this industry, right, is fundamentally different than the folks that are running your buildings on a day-to-day basis, right? So, the journey that we're on now, and one of the questions we want to try and answer is how do we weave those two pieces together, right? To sort of remove that digital burden from the folks that are operating our buildings, allow them to get back to do what they have been trained to do and have sometimes 10, 20, 30, 40 years of experience doing, right? It's not me having them sit in front of a computer and try and figure out interpret the results of a digital platform, right? It's them being able to walk into an air handler and immediately say, that's what we have to work on, right? Yeah. So there's two divergent skill sets here in the industry, and I think that we've tried to always kind of pack that all into the same bucket, and that's not a sustainable approach long term.
And my final comment is we're around this afternoon and tonight, and we're looking to learn from you. So we're here to actually have conversations. So I would anticipate, I would just encourage you, like, hey, I just love to riff, and I would love to have conversations over the course of the next while we're here. So.
Yeah. And with that, I'd like to say thanks to Jim, Matt, Ben. Appreciate you guys joining us today. This was great. Let's give them a round of applause. Before we take off, one housekeeping item. Do not shoot the messenger, but I was told that if there's any smokers here, you can't smoke out on the balcony. Don't shoot the messenger. You guys enjoy lunch. Thank you very much.